Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this seminar about parenting. I'm just going to go straight into it. And before entering into the seminar, you probably do have an introduction about why we are starting these sessions and what our aim is all about, or what our program is all about. So I'm just going to get started with the program right now. Welcome to all of you, and I'm really glad that you took the chance to come here. So this seminar itself is giving you the background about parenting in general and our parenting program. So a lot of topics that are going to be covered in this seminar are going to create the background knowledge that you need in order to understand the upcoming seminars and the upcoming sessions in the program, and in order to apply those concepts within your home environment. So why we are launching a program specifically on parenting, because this is where all of these issues that we are seeing in our family system begin, because of how we are programmed. And by programming, what we mean is that every child, we can say, comes into this world being holding a sense of innocence and a sense of being blank slate. By blank slate, what it means is that whatever you write on a blank piece of paper is going to stay on that blank piece of paper. It's going to become a program that is going to affect them throughout their life. So it's really essential to understand how we are actually programming our children and how we are programming ourselves. This will be the start of creating better relationships with the people, with not only our children, but our spouses, our coworkers, and all the other people around us, including our own parents as well, and ourselves. Uh, all of this is started from this very point of parenting. So let's just get started with the program itself. Now, topics that are going to be covered in this program include, in this specific seminar actually, include how do we actually become ourselves? What is the root cause of the behavior? And essential knowledge that's required before being able to create strategies of parenting, right? And we will get deeper into that, what it means, as we all go about the sessions. But this is just a summary of what topics we're going to discuss. So what is the self? Right? This is very interesting. I want you to take some time and just think about yourself. Think about what it means to be you. So for example, if my name is Natasha, what does it mean to be a Natasha? And how does my own self differ from the other people around me? When we look through a holistic perspective, a human being consists of three elements. One is the mind, the second is the body, and the third is the soul. So let's start with the soul. Soul is our inner conscience, right? It's that inner voice that tells us when things are going right. It's that inner voice that tells us when something is wrong, when we are doing something wrong. It's our inner self that doesn't exist as a physical being. The soul is a spiritual being, and it's a spiritual concept. We can say that the soul is born in a pure state and it commands to purity, right? So the the part of the self that is the soul is, we can say, always born in a pure state. When we look at these discussions that we are having about nature versus nurture, whether we are born a certain way, whether we are born to be good or evil, or whether those things are taught to us later on, when we look from our perspective or the holistic perspective itself, we understand that there are elements within us that take knowledge from the external world, but there is also knowledge that is created with us when we are born. And that is that a part of that is this inner conscience that is born in a pure state. So, for example, a person that's born in a pure state, a child is born. We haven't actually taught someone um, the difference between right and wrong, the difference between hurt or the difference between getting that sense of being rewarded when we do something good, or feeling bad about it when we do something that hurts other people. These are not always taught to us. I know we can debate whether those are taught to us, but there is that inner voice that does tell us that I don't agree with what you're doing. And when we consider that a part of our being, we can actually utilize that in our own lifestyle. For example, when we are facing a lot of confusion about all the events in our life, where the path between right and wrong is not always clear, there is that gray area that we're kind of stuck in, and we don't know what to do ahead in our life. So, this is where that inner conscience or that inner soul can be very useful. In the holistic or spiritual training, what we learn is ask your higher self or ask the higher conscience what you need to do. And part of that is appealing to our soul or our inner conscience. The other element that is a part of us is the body, and this includes physical processes. These includes our hands, our feet, our eyes. These also include our organs that we are not always seeing, like our liver, our lungs, our brain. And it also includes DNA processes, the memory that's transferred to us through our past generations, through the DNA, the memory that's present in our blood flow, the programming of our cells, how they, for example, let's just look at the immune system itself. The immune system is constantly taught to fight disease. Our cells contain a nucleus which has a specific program that it tells the cell to follow, and the cells are all following those specific programs. The cells within our eyes are following different programs than the cells within our hands, for example. The cells within our blood flow are following a specific program. They have a certain task to do. Our body actually contains these T cells, which are programmed to fight off infections and diseases. So, all of that is part of the physical process and it's part of our body. And it is very, very essential to understand that body is a part of us, it is given to us. And that is the part of us that we have to be thankful for and we have to appreciate. When we are raising our children, it is very important to understand that they are not just a spiritual being, but they also are born with as a physical being. So that means it's important to give them proper nutrients, proper diet, proper care that their body needs in order to grow. From the time before they are born, a mother needs to give herself proper nutrition in order to raise a healthy child. Now, when the child is born, it's again very important to make sure they grow in a healthy state of being. And hence, the physical processes are very important to keep in mind when raising our children. The third part of ourself, and this is a part of ourself that often goes unnoticed, is the mental process or the mind. The mind is a process. It's like a recording. It's like an ear that is listening since before birth to the now. And this creates a memory or an experience that we use in order to understand the world around us. The reason why it often goes unnoticed is because most of this process is subconscious. It's like the only part of it that we consciously see is like a tip of the iceberg, whereas the 70 to 80% of whatever happens in our mind is hidden from us. We don't see it. We just record it. It's just a recording of everything that we are doing. And this is where the concept of programming and programs comes into play. So think of it like a computer. For example, the computer has an operating system installed like Windows or the Mac OS. Now, in order to run anything, we need specific programs. In order to type something, I would go to, for example, Notepad. I would open this app. This is a program. Whatever I write in here will be saved, and the computer will remember it. What happens is that these things that we are recording, these programs we are recording, they start to repeat within our life. Things that we learn at a very young age, or at childbirth, or before even being born, things that we experience, these experiences that come to us, we are still remembering them when we are, say, 20, 25 years old. And those are still affecting us, but more at a subconscious level, because the recording has been done in our mind, the experience has been formed. Now, what the mind does is it creates new experiences based off of those experiences. So, for example, if I step on a needle one day, I'm going to remember that stepping on a needle has been painful. Now, when I see someone else step on a needle, um, it's not always that I'm thinking about, oh, I have stepped on the needle on that day. But when I see someone else step on that needle, I will suddenly remember the entire experience of that pain. And I might be looking at another person and say, ouch, that must hurt, because I remember the pain. And if I go towards stepping on a needle again, I might know, okay, this thing hurted me before. I don't want to have that same experience again, that same pain again. So the mind creates programs in order to protect us. It's like a protective mother in a way that, really wants to keep the child away from danger. But sometimes, not always, is that mother understanding that those things are not really as dangerous for the child. But this is how the mind just creates experiences, remembers the experiences, and tells us what to do in the future scenario when that happens again. So let's consider the mind to be a blank slate. This is the mental process. This is not talking about the spiritual or the soul. The mind at birth, as coined by a philosopher named John Locke and mentioned in earlier texts, he says that every being is born as a blank slate, every human being. So with this concept, just consider it like a piece of paper that has nothing written on it. So, according to the holistic perspective, every behavior we see is either an imitation or a reaction of an experience. This is the definition of the mind right here. I want everybody to just write it down if they can, or just remember this. Every behavior we see is either an imitation or a reaction of an experience. So, when we are actually raising our children and we see something that we don't like, they have said something or they have done something angrily, they've thrown something, uh, you know they've taken some toys and just thrown it on the ground, and now we're wondering, hey, where did that come from? I never did that in front of them. No, we have to remember, every behavior that we're seeing is either an imitation or a reaction of an experience. The children are very, very, very absorbent, you can say. They are noticing everything and they are observing everything because they are born with this, a blank slate. And their mind, just like ours, even today, is creating programs based on experience. The mind is taking meaning based on experience. This is how language and initial communication is formed. What that means is children are not Children are not born knowing how to talk. Children are not born knowing specific words. Every single word and every single meaning that comes from that word is based on an experience. I can look at the sky and I can say the sky is blue. But how do I know the sky is blue? Because I saw the sky and everybody around me says it's blue. So the experience that I have of that, whatever that is in the up there, is that it is blue. Another person could be looking at that same sky and they can have a very different experience associated with it. So their vision of the sky could be something entirely different, but they are still saying that it's blue based off of what they're learning. We don't know if our eyes are seeing the same color, but we are giving it meaning based off of our own experience. Try to understand it. You can think about it a little bit. But with this being said, just think about how language and initial communication is formed for a child. A child is sitting there, even, it's a newborn, even they cannot move, but we say certain words. A mother can say, "Oh, I love you so much." The child will not form an experience. But when we say, "I love you so much," and we are hugging them and we're caring for them and we're, rubbing their head, so they form an experience. They form an association with these words, "I love you." Now just imagine, and I know it's a very extreme example, but somebody tells you, "I love you," and they slap you in the face. What kind of experience will be formed based off of that? The word or the meaning that we derive out of those words might be something completely different than the meaning that another person derives from those words. This is how we need to be a little bit careful about every experience that we're giving to our children and what they're forming based off of that. This is also how our beliefs about the self are affected by what we see and what we hear. A child is not just listening to what you are saying to the child directly. A child is just an observer that is looking at and experiencing this new world that you've given to them based off of what they're seeing. So for example, a child is lying on their bed and they see their parents being in a conflict. Now, this is just a newborn child again. I'm giving an example of a newborn child that is seeing the parents being in a fight or an argument. How do you think the child is forming an experience based off of that? The parents are, for example, using negative language towards each other, and one of them says to the spouse that, "I hate you, you mean nothing to me." Is the child actually, um, is the child at this age aware that this language is not being said towards me, it is being said towards somebody else? Or is it possible that they can hear this language and absorb it as though it is being said to them, as though it is being experienced by them alongside of the pain they're experiencing and the instability they're experiencing seeing the two people they love fighting and arguing with each other? And I'm talking about a newborn right now. As the children grow up, they are more aware of the meanings of those words that are being said and what those mean in the language and the culture around us. So, how much do you think that they are absorbing by what they see and what they hear? Same way, even an adult is experiencing the world based off of what they see and what they hear. And so what happens is we create an experience and the mind reacts to those messages we received. So this is how we end up forming meaning, and this is how we start to experience this thing we call emotions. Just consider those emotions that we have now. We can have the emotion of happiness, sadness, And just take a moment. Take a moment. You can pause this video if you want and just think about what experiences are associated with those emotions that we have right now. So, what is the earliest experiences that we have attached to each emotion? And that will give you a deeper understanding of what you are experiencing even at this point in life. So, I'll give you one example. I'll give you one example. When I was a young child, for example, I went to do an exam in an exam room with my mom, and I was, let's say, like 7 or 8 years old. But at that age, we were doing like the school exams back home, and what happened is the teacher told my mom. My mom was sitting next to me. The teacher told me parents are not allowed here. And at that point in life, this was one of the first times I guess I saw somebody speak to my mother that way. And the teacher actually told my mother to leave the room because not because of anything that was happening at the time, but because of what she considered could happen, that I could potentially be cheating on my exam. Now, normally I used to get straight A's and good marks on those exams, and it was just having my mother next to me was a comfortable state to be in. But when I saw that being taken away, suddenly I panicked and I became very, for some reason, I became very anxious. With that, um, when I saw that my mother is leaving me and I became anxious, that this created an experience for myself. And this is perhaps one of the first times I experienced that I have to be self dependent now. My mom is going and I need to take care of things on my own. Um, at that point, I didn't do so good on the exam, but what happens is, based off of that experience, I start to form new experiences in life. And more recently, some of the experiences that I've had, I've realized, for example, that even right now, when I'm um, going to do studies, and I'm often remembering that, um, well, a while ago actually, I was be feeling that same anxiety that when I go for my studies, I feel like that I'm moving away from the people that in my family and things like that that I've been very attached to. So again, our mind reacts to those messages, and it's up to us how we want to move forward with those. Um, those experiences in our childhood don't necessarily have to affect us to this day, but sometimes we find that they are still affecting us in our adult life. And that's where the holistic perspective and the emotional clearing and things like that comes in. So just letting you know, mind reacts to messages that we are receiving. It could be anything. It could be something so simple that we haven't even noticed go by that could still be affecting us today. And this is the same thing that we want to be alert when we are raising our children, that how is their mind reacting to the messages they are receiving. I know that my own child would is very has a very good memory, and she can recall any experience. Sometimes she would recall things that I've said that I wouldn't remember, but she would remember them maybe weeks later. And she will remind me, Mom, on that day, in this time, you said this. And now this is the reaction that I'm having from it. It could be a positive reaction, it could be a negative reaction, it could be a promise that I've made and forgotten. But this is what it is. Children are born as a blank slate. Children are born with the capacity to learn, and they are learning um, consistently. They are learning constantly from the environment around them. And it's our responsibility to give them as much we can't be perfect parents, but it's our responsibility to at least understand that everything is affecting them, and we want to give them as much positive from this world as we can, especially with the conditions that are happening around us. We know there's a lot of negativity, but in that little garden that we are creating, which is the home, we want them to be raised in a positive state of being, where in a healthy environment where they can have at least some good to absorb from this world that we are giving them. Early years programming. So the early years, generally we are talking about ages 0 to 6. So this can be before birth to the age of 6. We know that 70 to 90% of development does take place at this time. First, their body is formed, their mind is being formed, they're picking up the first examples of language, they're picking up their first experience of this life and this world after they come into this world. And they start to move their hands and feet. They're learning to experience the world around them, and they do this through the 5 senses: the sense of sight, taste, smell, and touch. This is when the development of voluntary movement, reasoning, perception, all of these things happen. And this is when we start to form emotions, attachments. We start to plan, work with our memory and perception. The sense of self and the sense of what life is being formed in this time. Very, very important. What do I see? Um, how do I understand myself is based off of the experience that we have had in our early years. So, for example, now we have to be very, very careful about the messages that we are giving to our children in this age. I've had so many clients, and I've done this work on myself as well. There are a lot of messages that we receive that are not even directed to us, but we start to experience the life around us based off of that. A person, a child can hear their parents fighting, and a child can hear them say very bad things to each other, and they can grow up. Um, they can grow up thinking those same beliefs about their own self. For example, a child can, if a parent says, "I hate you" to another parent in front of the child, a child can be growing up thinking that the world hates them, or everyone hates them, or their parents hate them. These kind of programs do get formed, unfortunately, and unfortunately, this is what leads to mental disturbances and issues happening in especially our youth time. So this is where it all begins. This is where we are forming meaning of life, and we unfortunately, maybe in the past, we have not understood how much of an effect this can have on the child. Maybe we haven't raised our younger generation while knowing that they are being affected by everything we say, by everything we do, by everything they hear. We could even have, for example, news of playing in the background, and the child is picking up messages from those news. And you know that a lot of the time the media is meant to create panic or meant to create negativity in a way that creates more listeners, right? So we want to be careful about what kind of messages we are giving, and we want to be, at least as parents, again, we cannot be perfect. We cannot give them 100% good that, we cannot create a perfect human beings, but we can do our best. The least we can do for our children is give them a positive sense of the world, give them a positive sense of the self, give them the confidence to believe in themselves. that they are capable of accomplishing good in this world, even when the conditions might be bad. um, we might be able to give them some light in this world around them so they can create a better future for themselves. For that, we don't necessarily need to be strict on them. We just need to give them the right programming to help themselves. This is also very interesting. Sometimes we want our children, we worry that why are our children throwing tantrums as they're growing up? Sometimes, we expect this from toddlers that, okay, 1 or 2 year olds might be throwing a tantrum. Why is my 6 or 7 year old now throwing tantrums at me? And why can't they just understand that, a lot of times parents are using the term of consequences. When they do this, I'm going to give them this. When they do something bad, I'm going to give them a timeout. In the past, yes, we can say that it worked, but one point to understand is cognitive development, which is the emotional regulator of the brain and uses analysis of information to choose results. It does not complete development until the age of 21. What does that mean? What it means is that you know how we process information to make sense of things. If I do this, then this will happen. As a consequence, it will lead to this, and this is the result that I will get. Our brain doesn't fully process all of this information until the age of 21 when we are adults. Our brain is only forming, our brain is only completing part of the process. It's not able to regulate itself to the point until that age. So, what we can understand from this is this could be a good reason why we can understand children need parental guidance until a certain age to accomplish the things that they need to do in life. If they cannot process that information, we have to be um, the regulator for them. We have to be the advisors for them. We have to tell them, okay, beta, if you do this, it's going to lead to these consequences, it's going to lead to these results. In the end, you will feel happy. When they're showing impatience, we can give them, a sense of, don't worry, good is coming on its way. It's just taking some time. But we cannot expect them to understand every situation on their own. For example, a child could be saying, okay, I want something, and they just keep bugging us about it. They're keeping on thinking about that same thing, and we're like, hey, why don't you understand? You're not getting it right now, you're getting it later. I'm not giving it to you right now. Why you don't understand this? Well, they're not capable of understanding it. We have to explain it to them. You're not getting this now, but I will bring this to you later. And we might have to repeat that same sentence to them several times for them to be able to understand it. But we shouldn't lose our patience in that because, again, we have to understand that they are not thinking in the same way as we are. Their cognitive development has not fully structured. However, in the early years, the brain processes information at 95% higher rate. The neurotransmitters of the brain are quickly absorbing all information. And this is the stage at which most of the emotional development does take place. We can understand that children are very, very observant and very, very absorbent beings. It's like a sponge. You put them in any kind of water, they are going to absorb that water. So especially when their brain and their mental functions and their physical functions are being formed, 95% is a pretty high rate for processing information. And when with children, every single little thing counts. So we want to make it that majority of the time we are giving them good information that they can process, rather than bad information, so that onwards they are creating good experiences for themselves. How do we do this? We will discuss these techniques more in the upcoming seminars, but one way to do it is the right and left brain balance. For example, we have to understand that the right side of our brain is linked to emotion and left side of the brain is analytical. So we would use a connect and redirect approach. So this is one of the things proposed by an expert named Dan Siegel, who is an expert on the brain and child development. He said that especially when the child is having an outbreak, you have to try to integrate both sides of the brain. So, for example, one moment they might be highly, highly emotional. So, you are acknowledging the emotion and integrating their analytical side by asking them questions, by making them ponder on different topics, by guiding the brain towards um, some other thought process than what they are indulged in. But in order to do that, you have to connect to that side of the brain and redirect it to the right side. And we will again discuss that more in the upcoming seminars. Okay. Okay, let's move on. So again, these are topics that we're going to be discussing in the upcoming seminars, but let's consider the parent's role in attachment patterns. So there's a theory, different theories created about attachment patterns. The most prominent ones that I'm going to discuss are by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. These were also, again, experts in the field of mind and brain development. They mentioned that there are four different types of attachment patterns that we see in children, and these attachment patterns in the early age do affect how children are raised as they become adults. So, first one is secure attachment, and this is the best form of attachment that you want to achieve. You can walk into a room and the child is sitting, the parent is nearby, the parent might be able to leave and come back, but the child is confident to approach their carers. They expect their distress will be understood and responded to unconditionally. So if the child falls down, they get hurt, they know that their parent is nearby and they will protect the child and take care of them. This sense of trust extends into the child's expectations of other relationships. So as that child is growing up, a child that is in a secure attachment pattern, they are able to trust their parents. They are able to have codependence. So um, they know that their parents are nearby, even though their parents might be doing another task, but the parent will be there for them whenever the child needs them. If I get hurt, my mom and dad are here for me. If I'm in trouble, my mom and dad will protect me. This is where we also learn about, for example, God's mercy, or, our parents are our first examples of what we are experiencing in this world and the beliefs that we form around that. So, parents can be good examples of what God's mercy is. My mom, I remember, always used to tell me, Allah is Rahman, Allah is Rahim, always expect good from Allah. And as my daughter was saying, Allah is merciful. So merciful that whenever you're in trouble, Allah will help you. Yes, baby, Allah is beneficent. So we can, the same way we believe that we will never be in trouble, we will never be alone. We always have that trust in somebody around us or in God, and we will be safe no matter what. this creates our belief, our self-confidence in the future. So our relationship with our parents is good. Growing up, we will be able to create healthy relationships for ourselves. We will make good friends with the same kind of attachment pattern, like that. That is a secure attachment. Okay, I'm making this friend, but this friend is not out there to harm me. This friend, I'm only going to try make friends with people who are confident, who are able to raise me up, things like that. Now, beyond that, there is another attachment pattern. It's called anxious avoidant attachment. These are children that are learning that their emotions are not responded to empathetically. Expressions of their emotions will anger or irritate their carer. And then these children start to repress their emotional needs. So uh, the child is worried that if I need help, it's going to cause trouble for me. It's going to cause pain for my parents. My parents might get angry. So if I'm running, 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 I fall down, instead of somebody coming to help me and clear my wound and give me a hug, if I fall down right now, I'm going to have somebody yelling at me that, oh, why did you fall down? And I don't want that. I don't want to experience that, so I'm just going to keep these emotions to myself. This is the anxious avoidant attachment. Now just imagine that growing up, this child has learned to keep their emotions to themselves. How are they going to react to the world around them? How much messages are they going to keep to themselves? And what's that going to raise them up to be like? Then there is ambivalent or resistant attachment. In this situation, the caregiver is inconsistent or unreliable due to their own issues. So, for example, the parent might be undergoing stress. The parent might be having health issues. The parent might just not be able to be there for their children. They might be working 24/7. It could be a single parent that doesn't have another person to support them, and hence the parent is angry. The parent might be threatening. So the parent is just not there, and what happens is the child becomes angry, the child becomes exaggerated, threatening, and they start to become clingy. So have you ever tried that, like when you become too busy with your own life, your children start to use other methods to gain your attention. They might start to throw tantrums to gain your attention. They might start to cling to you more often. Mom, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to stay with you all the time. I don't want you to go to work. I don't want you to be busy in your life. Things like that. So this is a ambivalent or resistant attachment. Oftentimes nowadays, especially where both parents are working, their children are missing their attention. So this might be happening in their homes. This might be happening in your homes. So this is something to watch out for. Even if you're working, you want to let your children know that I'm there for you. I'm here to protect you. I'm going to be there for you whenever you need me. I'm just a bit busy right now, but right after it, I will be there for you. So, or create some kind of backup support so the children don't feel left out, the children don't feel alone or isolated. The children have somebody to turn to and they feel that their needs are being met. Most important for the child is to experience the world around them, to experience that their needs are being met by the people around them, right? So this is another type of attachment pattern. And as we are actually discussing these, you can also reflect these in your life. What kind of childhood did you have? What kind of attachment pattern did you undergo? And how did that affect you in what you're becoming today? And how can we work on some of those childhood programs that are formed to create a better me, to create a better parent, right? Again, now there's one more called disorganized attachment, and this is the most troublesome one because there's no safe response to the attachment needs. The carer could be typically the cause of the distress for the child, and their only figure for resolving distresses doesn't exist. It can create, a bizarre relationship in the way that children are relating to others. They haven't learned any clear way to relate or regulate their emotions. And these children can show chaotic, confused, incoherent, and angry ways of relating to others. This can also be seen as a freeze strategy. So, what happens is um, possibly not that common in our community, but it is a possibility that it also exists. It especially, for example, where parents are drinking or consuming alcohol or consuming drugs. What happens is that they often, or even if they're not, and they are just not able to regulate their own emotions, the parents often do end up abusing their children. And what that creates is a child is born into the world. They have no idea about how the world functions, and they just see somebody coming and harming them and creating fear in them and creating pain for them. This is how they understand the world. How are these children going to form any safe relationships with the people around them in the future when they don't trust this world? They only see pain in this world. These children are going to be very disturbed and very, very unbalanced, unstable in their own lives and their own relationship patterns. So they are going to need a lot of healing to be able to come out of that state. If the parents are not able to regulate themselves, they are not going to be able to raise good children. And that's why part of this program is, really focusing on not only raising healthy children, but also um, giving ourselves as parents what we need, uh, the proper care, the proper understanding of the mind of this world, of whatever we can do to create better parents, better people in ourselves. We can definitely will have an impact on the future generation as well. Again, I want you to go into your own childhood. Try to understand, did you ever see or experience this kind of relationship with anyone, and not just our parents? It could be with anyone. Did you ever see somebody that was disorganized, that was unstable? How did that affect you in your youth or in growing up? So now we go to our own patterns and role in programming. Messages that we are receiving from parents as we're growing up become our thought pattern. So our own patterns and role in programming. Excuse me. So I did mention that it's I did mention that it's very important to understand our own patterns and how that affects our children. Messages we are receiving from parents as we are growing up become our own thought patterns, even if they're not meant for us. And we've already gone and given an example of them, that if one parent says you're useless, the child could grow up thinking that, okay, I'm useless. And the parent is not really saying it to the child, but the child is still picking it up, right? So we need to be careful about the experiences, but we also have to understand that these are some of the patterns that we might be growing up with. A person that is having trouble finding a job might have this program inside themselves that they are useless, and this might be coming from their childhood. So this is something that they will have to work on. If they can somehow let go of this belief, it will change the pattern that's created in their life. So, whatever we say or do is we've just created a pattern that is going to repeat in the child's life as a thought process. And the same has happened with us. How we have grown up and the experiences that the previous generations are carrying is transferred along with emotional memory in DNA. So we do know that a lot of the time the diseases that we know we in the diseases, chronic diseases, are carried through the DNA. So if our mom or dad has diabetes, we're going to consider, being a little bit more careful because diabetes runs in our family. So we are more at risk of having that disease. In the same way, emotional memory is also passed through the DNA, and that could be one of the root causes of diseases repeating themselves as well, because a lot of diseases are attached to our emotional memory and how we experience the world as well. So that's another topic to discuss on another day. But for now, it's just really important to understand that memory can be transferred through DNA. So we can take some time, we can look at our own family patterns, our own previous generations. Um, what is the good that we have received through them? What kind of habits or what kind of patterns do we see being formed in our own lives that have come from previous generations? And what is the bad that we might have received from them, from the previous generations? So, for example, for me, I'll give you an example of myself. Once again, one of the beliefs that I do encounter or that I do often have to work on is these beliefs that we have about money and uh, what kind of role money plays in our lives. So often I did grow up thinking that in terms of money, I'm not supposed to keep it in my hand. I have to give it away, and giving it away and not having it in my hand is going to help me out. So, what often happened is whenever I had money, I would just give most of it away and not leave anything for myself. And I would feel happy in that. But then I feel guilty when I try to earn something for myself. And that's a belief that over time I really had to work on, that no, having something for yourself should not make you feel guilty, because you need something to be able to give. Even to be able to give to others, we need to build ourselves first, right? So these kind of patterns, we don't absorb them consciously, but subconsciously they do affect us. So I know that this belief might have come from previous generations. Our previous generations, for example, the people who are growing up in India and Pakistan, their elders or their previous generations have gone through the entire um, process of first being colonized by Britain, then trying to come out of that, gaining independence from Britain, and then separating between India and Pakistan. So a lot of conflict did take place, and that could be affecting us today. It could be, beyond that, a lot of people are born as Sayyid. They could be having certain patterns repeat in their lives that are positive. So, for example, our elders had done certain duas or had certain habits, and we are still carrying them, so we can have that positive as well. So just think about all the ways that we are being affected by our forefathers or previous generations, and what kind of memory we are carrying through those. Then what kind of patterns we had in our childhood where we are dealing directly with our parents, and how did that form the world around us today? How did that affect us today? And now we are going to move forward on the next step after doing all of this to understand how we are raising the next generation. The next generation is a very critical one, and we want to raise them in the best way possible, especially with the circumstances that are happening around the world today. This generation is definitely, we know that this is an important generation coming up. So we want to do our best in that. We don't want to waste another generation. And that's why it's really important for us to be able to understand how these brain processes, how these experiences, how these programs are being formed, and what we can do in our efforts to raise them up. And that concludes our presentation. And this is our motto in Natural Answers. We want to create a world where we are giving them stability of the mountains. We want children to be stable, stable like a mountain. Mountain can see various storms and various conditions, but the mountain is always going to remain stable and firm wherever it's needed. The mountain has its roots, you know, touching the ground or the ends of the earth, even though it's floating. Then we want to create flow of the rivers. The rivers are flexible. They flow in the direction where their path is taking them, and they turn and they adopt the shape of the container that or the land that they are flowing on. And they are constantly going. They move forward even, without having to stop, even when there's rocks on the way, or the rivers flow. It just doesn't end. It goes right to the river, to the ocean, or to the lake, right? We want to give them guidance of the stars. We want to give them role models to look up to. We want to at least show them the path towards the role models. So, is in the past, people who would be lost would look up at the sky and they know they can create a map. Okay, this is the direction I need to go. We want to achieve that for the next generation, and we want to achieve all of this for ourselves as well. So this is what we want to do at Natural Answers. So again, what I want everyone to take out of this program is that there is a lot of programming, there's a lot of messages that we've grown up with, and these are affecting us today. And the child's mind is being affected by our own programming that we are carrying with us. In order to help the next generation, we have to work through our own programming, and then we have to understand how the mind works so we can create good strategies to create an effective next generation. If we want our kids to listen to us, if we want to parent them without pain, then there's a lot of strategies there in place that we can use to help them out in creating, a better future. But all of this takes time and it takes understanding, and that's why I've created this series of seminars just to help or assist you with this process. I can't give you 100% results, but our program will support you through coaching, through these seminars. You will also receive certain bonuses that are going to be mentioned with this video. So I look forward to hearing from you all, and have yourselves a great day and a great life ahead. Thank you.